This is Sam. Oh yeah, I hear, and I'm going to tell you a story. It's called Paco and the Bloody Arrow. Once upon a time, there was a grey cat named Paco. He lived in a faraway land where anything could happen. And if you don't know Paco, one thing you do need to know is that anything can happen. And it will happen to him. One evening, Paco was walking when he noticed a small pool of blood. Paco became worried that someone had been badly hurt and needed some help. So, without a moment's hesitation, Paco followed the trail of blood until he found an arrow laying on the ground. Ooh. Paco examined the arrow and recognized the feathers. This arrow belonged to a man by the name of Curious Carl. The only problem with this knowledge is that Curious Carl lived in a far-off castle of golden trees. Why would he be in Stonecutter's Edge? That's a good question. Paco had many questions, so do I. And he wanted answers, so do I. We have a lot in common. Paco looked around the arrow trying to pick up the trail of blood again, but there was no more blood and Paco was at a loss until he noticed tire tracks. Ooh, tire tracks. Paco was no tracker, so he needed to call on an old friend for help. Paco ran off into the woods. If he ran, he could make it to the moon rock. He could catch his friend in time. Paco was nothing but a blur dashing through the woods. Paco loved the feeling of wind whipping through his fur. As he ran, the moon was just about to rise when Paco reached the moon rock. Breathing hard, Paco jumped onto the rock and waited for his friend to show. The moon was halfway up when Paco heard something in the woods behind him. "You're late, Shard," said Paco. "You're early." "What are you doing here?" asked Shard as he climbed onto the rock and sat next to Paco. "I'm here with a mystery, and I was hoping you could help me solve it." "Well, I hope you don't need me as a man. It's almost time for me to change," said Shard. "Then we are both in luck. I need a tracker." "Wish granted," said Shard as he stood in front of the moon rock, opening his arms wide and began to howl. Paco never liked watching Shard changed from man to wolf, but he sat patiently waiting for the process to finish. That's so sweet of him to wait. It wasn't long before Paco saw a shadow of a wolf howling at the full moon. After a minute or two, Shard was sitting on the rock with Paco once again. "So what's this mystery that you have?" asked Shard. "I found a bloody arrow during my walk." So? "So, the arrow belongs to Curious Carl." "Curious Carl? Over in Stonecutter's Edge? Why?" "That is what I would like to find out." "Any leads?" asked Shard. "Just some blood, an arrow, and some tire tracks." "Lead the way, Paco." Without a word, Paco took off like a shot, closely followed by Shard. Paco stopped by the arrow and waited for Shard to catch up. Apparently Shard is really slow. "Have at it, take your time," was all Paco said. Shard immediately began to sniff around and soon picked up a scent. "Well, it's not Curious Carl. If not him, who?" asked Paco. "Let's find out," said Shard, as he began to trot into the direction of Northworth. It was almost dawn when Paco and Shard reached the town of Northworth. "What's going on?" asked Shard, The town was busy. People were everywhere. Oh dear, what is happening? This is so exciting. I think I might know what's going on, said Paco as he pointed out a poster. The Monsterhood Theatre presents the play Fingerprints, read Shard. Paco and Shard looked at each other. What could Curious Coral, a bloody arrow, and the Monsterhood Theatre have in common? Asked Paco. Shard shook his head. Can you still follow the scent? Asked Paco. No, too many people and creatures, replied Shard. Then I'm afraid we have run out of leads, said Paco. Well, we could ask around if anyone has seen a carriage come by, but I think that would be a waste of time, knowing that there are so many people here now, said Shard. But at least we can catch the show. Good idea! I'll go get us some tickets, said Paco as he ran off. While finding their seats, Shard noticed a particular smell coming from the stage. It was during the scene where the hunter was coming and killing 2 innocent monsters. Shard nudged Paco and told him that the scent belonged to the man on stage shooting the monsters with an arrow. That's when Paco noticed that the feathers again. Oh, I think I know who did it. As being the same from the bloody arrow. I knew it. Shards, I think I figured out our little mystery, said Paco. Have you? Yes, and we need to pay a visit to the hunter character. After the show was over, Paco led Shard backstage and found the hunter. Curious Coral, I never pictured you as a thespian. I was right. Curious Coral? But he smells nothing like him, interjected Shard. That is what a masking potion does. It hides or changes a person's scent, said Paco. And that would be right. I don't want people finding out that I travel with the Monsterhood. How did you figure out it was me? Asked Carl. Curious Carl. Well, your arrows gave most of it away, and I must say, whoever made the blood mixture did a magnificent job with it. It fooled me into thinking someone was terribly hurt, said Paco. We were testing the rigs that the monsters have to wear in the shooting to make sure the blood comes out right and they don't get hurt, said Carl. Curious Carl. Then you might want to clean up after yourself in case this happens again, said Shard. I will indeed, said Curious Carl with a laugh. And that concludes our story. How exciting is that?